Stories 20. Thanks, Janet. Big Hearted Stories 2024. It's hard to believe we've been doing this now for, Brian, I don't know what, 10 years? No, I think it's like, it feels like, no, 4 or 5 years. And this is a fundraising event for Big Hearts for Seniors, which is an organization of volunteers and people from the University of Michigan, different departments that support community services that serve older adults in Washtenaw County. And I believe there are 6. I know I can name some: Meals on Wheels, the Housing Bureau for Seniors, Silver Club. Janet, can you help me?
Osher Lifelong Learning Institute and
Osher Lifelong, yep.
Turner Senior Wellness Program and the Turner African American Services Council. And we're actually all part of Community Health Services now. It's no longer 2 different departments.
Oh, great. So 100% of the, of the proceeds from the event split equally among these organizations. So that's our guiding light, our guiding star. That said, the stories that we're doing do not all have to be related to older adults. And nor is participation limited to older adults. So if you know a really amazing 12-year-old who has a great story and wants to participate and enter this, they would be absolutely allowed to do that. So, and we also don't have an expiration date on the end. If you're over 100 and you're up and wanting to do it, you're welcome as well. Anyway, so the way today is going to work is Brian Cox, who is my co-artistic director. My name's Breeda Miller. We're storytellers. Brian is a writer, a coach. He produces storytelling events, and he's been doing this for a very long time. And we're thrilled to have his expertise to guide us. And our goal today is to help you craft stories, to think about stories maybe in a different way than you have. What are the elements of effective storytelling, and a step-by-step process to really help you capture that moment, that experience, and share it with other people. So Brian will do his pitch, then I'll talk about the nuts and bolts of the event, answer any questions, talk about dates, what's involved, how we're going to make a choice, who we're looking for, what we're looking for, and then we'll open it up for questions, and hopefully we'll have some good answers for you. Okay, Brian, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brian Cox.
All right. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here. There's quite a few faces I recognize and names that I know. And Bill, you'll be surprised a little later on during the presentation. So we'll get to it. I want to hold you in suspense. So I have a little slideshow that we're going to walk through. Let's see if this works. Can everyone see that? Yes, good. Okay. Get up here. Okay. I call this Bringing Out the Storyteller in You. And the goal that I would love for everyone to leave with today is this idea of the importance of sharing your story and figuring out how best to identify a story from your life. Sometimes the story can, you have one, but the question is well, how do I contain it? How do I identify it and build it and structure it? And so we're going to talk about some of that stuff this morning. This is the how this thing is going to work for Big Hearted. You'll submit a story idea. Breeda will go over this more in detail, but that will just be a very brief summary of your story. It doesn't even have to be nothing has to be complete or finished at that point. It could just be, I met my wife in Boston and had a Boston cooler and didn't know it was a Detroit drink. And now I call it Detroit coolers. And all that is to kind of pique our interest and go, okay, that sounds like a story that 1 fits the theme, and 2 sounds like a story that can be supported over 8 minutes. All the stories that we're going to that you share are going to be, the time limit is 8 minutes. Then there's going to be a day where we'll ask you to come in, and we call it pitching your story. I avoid the word audition, but it's a little like that. We want to meet you. We want to hear your thoughts on the story. We're looking for a variety of a lineup, a variety of stories. How do you present? What is your energy level like? How comfortable are you going to be up in front of an audience that's, I think it's 300-400 people. And then we will choose, I think it's 5 storytellers. That'll be a very difficult decision. It always is. And then if you are chosen, we will go through a process of 3 workshops. They tend to be about an hour long. And they're on Zoom. And we will help you identify and work on your story so that you're ready, so that you're prepared to get up there and tell the story in the best possible way. The workshop this morning is just going to really primarily focus on the first 2 steps. What I want everyone to come away with, I want you to come away encouraged and excited about the idea of sharing your stories, whether that's with Big Hearted or not. There are other opportunities around the community for live storytelling. And I hope you come away with the incentive to pursue those other opportunities. I want you to come away reassured that you do have a story worth telling, that it is a story worth being heard. And I want you to come away inspired to keep getting out there and keep taking the risk of putting yourself forward. You may already have a story in mind. Once you read the theme, you may already have in your head, this is a story I want to tell. This is the story I want to pitch. And if that's the case, awesome. Hopefully this will give you some idea on how to shape it. If you don't, if you're just interested, if you just think I do have stories, but you haven't necessarily identified the one, hopefully after this workshop, you'll have some ideas of how to identify the story or stories that you may want to pitch. So at the submission process, you can actually submit 2 or 3 different story ideas. At the pitch fest, we would then, if we were like, hey, we like 2 of these, we would let you know, come prepared to talk to us about 2 of these story ideas. So you're not limited to submitting just 1 story idea. When you are thinking of your story, think about these 7 elements. Character. We're going to see later a couple examples of stories that center on character, who the person or persons are in the story. Theme. Well, we have a theme, and it's a pretty broad one. But in your own story, you may have identify a narrower theme, a sub theme that's under the broad theme of love, right? It might be loss or grief, or it may be reawakening. Plot. A plot is, well, it's what happens, right? But let me tell you, the stories we are looking for are never about what happened. The stories we are looking for are about how do you feel about what happened. I mean, a story needs a plot, right? It needs to go from A to B to C, but just a plot might sometimes just be an anecdote, and a story has broader elements in it. So think about that. But you will want to have a plot. Point of view in oral storytelling, it's very uncommon to see a point of view that is like not your own. Particularly, we're looking for stories that are true. So that plays less of a role here. Setting. Some stories we go back to the Boston story, the Boston cooler story, some stories, setting may be a critical element of it. Think about that. If setting is important in your story, then one of the things you're going to want to do is find details that identify that setting, that paint that picture in your listener's mind. Conflict. All stories need conflict. What does that mean? The real simple way of explaining that is somebody wants something, somebody has obstacles in the way that they have to get around or over or under or through to get what they want. They have to have conflict. And then tone. And tone, in this case, what I would talk about is, if it might be comedic, it might be dramatic, it may be darkly comedic. We would work on tone in the workshop, which is we would just want to assure that it has one steady tone, that you're not moving around from one tone to another, which can be jarring to the listeners. Okay. So the main ones, though, that I would think for this event, this type of story, that you would want to concentrate on are character, setting, theme, plot, and conflict. There are 7 basic plots. Your story is going to probably fit into one of these or a combination of these. Overcoming the monster. That might be an addiction story. That could be anything that is has to be fought. Rags to riches. This is where you it's exactly what it says. Where you kind of start at a low point and you rise up to a high point. So if we were looking at a love story could certainly be a rags to riches kind of story. The quest. The quest is when a character goes out in search of something and has to overcome these obstacles to achieve it. The voyage and return. The voyage and return is as old as Iliad and the Homer, right? I mean, this could be a college story, right? When I went to college, I left a certain home, a certain comfort zone, and then I went to college. This happened. I discovered this, and I returned, and this is how I was different. There's comedy, which I think we all know, tragedy, and then rebirth. And rebirth is that reawakening theme. I was down and I was out, and now I'm a new person. And this relationship, maybe if we're talking about a love theme, this relationship was a rebirth for me. That could very easily be the case. But one of the things to think about with these plots is with your story, is that it can help you identify the way it's going to look. So if you say to yourself, what kind of plot do I have? This is an overcoming the monster. Then you know that there are certain pieces that have to be into that. We have to know what the monster is. We have to know how hard it was to fight that monster. And then hopefully, and we'll see an example of that. Actually, write this down. Well, you don't have to write it down if you can remember it, which I can't. So I'm going to write it down. We're going to see an example of what I would call is part overcoming the monster. And you'll see what I mean. That'll be a perfect example. Oh, well, I just walked you through this. So I forgot I had this slide on here. Overcoming the monster. Here, so some examples. Dracula. Well, Dracula is the monster. Star Wars. Rags to riches would be examples are like Cinderella, Great Expectations, Prince and the Pauper. The Quest. The Quest is super popular. Lord of the Rings, Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. The Voyage and Return, Alice in Wonderland, Apollo 13, Wizard of Oz. Comedy, I don't know if I need to go into a lot of that. Tragedy, here's a great one for me. Breaking Bad, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the show, but Breaking Bad is a perfect example of essentially the fatal flaw. right? This is Breaking Bad is a Greek tragedy. There is a flaw in Walter that leads to his demise. It is inevitable. And then the rebirth. And a great one that I really like to point to as a rebirth is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Because you can find these themes even in the most simplest and charming of stories. All right. And feel free, by the way, if you have any questions about any of this, to like throw it in the chat, or you can bring it up at the end. So we're going to be doing personal storytelling. And one of the ways I describe that is storytelling that is private becoming public and public becoming private. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's this idea that you take a personal, like the loss of my mother. This is a good example. It's a very personal experience. And I share that, I make that public. I share that experience, and that experience becomes public. And what I find, of course, is that we've all suffered loss. And so it becomes this sharing, this real exchange of a human experience that we feel is private, mine alone, when in the end it's not. It's this combination, right? It is mine and mine alone, but it's also yours and ours together. The other one is taking something that is public and becoming private. An example I use is 9/11 was a public event. I mean, a horrific tragedy. But someone that was there, or someone that tells you this is how 9/11 affected me, that becomes personal. So it takes it from a large macro scale, this story, this huge event, and it narrows it down, and it puts a face on it. So your story might be is going to be one of those. At this event, it's important to remember this. The storyteller will have this is at most live storytelling events, frankly, will have an open, benevolent relationship with the audience. They will not be sitting back and saying, okay, make me laugh or entertain me. They are going to be welcoming you and hoping for you to succeed. They will be looking for that exchange of energy. They will be open and enthusiastic about receiving it. You don't perform. I don't know if everyone knows the term fourth wall, but it's a term in the theater. And the idea of the fourth wall is that I don't see the audience, right? There's four walls around the stage, and I don't recognize the audience. We're acting like they're not here. In this event, that is not the case. You will be speaking through the fourth wall. You will be aware of the audience. You'll be speaking directly to them. This storytelling is synergistic. You are exchanging this. There is this exchange of energy as you make something private public, or as you make something public private, that you will experience this shift and exchange of energy. And so will the audience. Ideally, the audience will as well. And that's where the entertainment comes from. The goal is for you to engage with the audience. And through engagement comes entertainment. It is a key difference in my mind. We're not looking for people to entertain the audience. It does need to be entertaining, but not because you're entertaining them. It's because you're engaging with them. So that'll be one of our goals. A lot of times I've worked with actors, and I know Wallace is here. Wallace is an actor, and he's done a story for us, and maybe he can speak to it about it. And actors want to act. Part of the job that I undertake with actors who are telling stories is to strip that away from them, to strip away the veneer of acting, which a good actor can make it look like they're not. But so we won't be asking you to act. Important to know. So no one needs to think, well, I can't be up in front of somebody, I can't act. We're not asking you. We don't want you to act. Unless you can do it so well, I can't tell. And Wallace is pretty close with that. So, okay, how to discover and choose the personal narrative you want to tell. If you already have a story in mind, you don't need to necessarily worry about any of this. But if you don't, if you're like, I think I have some stories, here are some suggestions on how to find what that story is. Reflect on significant points in your life. Storytelling is about often looking back and building on reflection, using reflection as a building tool. So significant points in your life, significant relationships, that might be very important for this particular theme. Look back on your family roots or places of meaning to you. That speaks to the setting element of a story, right? I love doing this. I do a project called Snapshots, which involves true storytelling, live storytelling, involving photographs. Several people I think here have worked with me on one of those. So I look back through your photo albums for inspiration. I love doing this with people. In fact, Breeda's an example of sitting down and looking through a photo album and starting to tell stories about photos that look in some sense insignificant. But when you start talking about those photographs, when you start exploring the emotions that you have attached to them, the stories rise up like spirits, right? They do. They come right off of the photo album page. And suddenly this person that we're just looking at a birthday party, an entire story builds up around them. It's an amazing little process. When you are considering which story to submit or pitch for Big Hearted, ask yourself this question and answer it. Don't just ask it. Why do you want to tell this story? There could be quite a few stories, many stories you may have. Why do you want to tell this one? That answer will inform how you develop the story and the shape and the look that it has. As you're considering the story, here's some thoughts on story structure. You know that it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's the way we like to hear stories. But this is important. The beginning is not just simply the first event. So this isn't fair to my mother, but I use it as the example because she was a terrible storyteller. And the reason she was a terrible storyteller is because she would start with the first event. So she would say, you are not going to believe what happened to me at the grocery store today. Oh, okay, Mom, what happened? Well, all right. Well, first of all, I got up and I made coffee and I realized, well, I was out of coffee filters, but so I put that on the list. I was going to go do that. And then, well, your father wanted eggs. And so I made some eggs. She would start at the beginning. Very boring, very, very boring. It would take her a long time to finally get to what happened at the grocery store. So start your story at an inciting moment, not necessarily exciting, but inciting. Where does this story really kick off? And the beginning should be something that grabs people. We'll see examples of that a little bit later. The middle. Well, the middle is where we're exploring the natural evolution of the story. And then the end. We call it the inevitable conclusion. The idea that the story is inevitable is when that happens, is incredibly satisfying to the listener or the reader or the watcher, because they'll say, oh, of course. It doesn't mean that it's predictable. Predictable ending is boring. It isn't until the ending happens that the audience says, oh, that is, of course, the way it had to happen. That's very satisfying. Think about using images and foreshadowing in your beginning to engage your audience. Again, we'll see examples of that. Use strong verbs and nouns in your story. Try to be as specific as possible rather than being vague. Consider using senses, sights, smells, sounds. We had a storyteller who was telling a story about her grandmother. Wonderful story, wonderful woman. And in talking with her, in exploring what are the sights and smells and sounds that embodied your grandmother, one of the things that came out was she smoked, I think they were Virginia Slims, but so she had this cigarette smoke about her, and this was became a very important element to the story, because as soon as you say that, that becomes something that we identify. We start to see this character emerge. Tension and release tension. This idea of building questions. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And then relieving the audience. An audience doesn't like it if you're just dragging out this point of tension, and it can create frustration. So the idea is you create tension, release it a little bit, and then create more, and then release it, and that creates a satisfying experience for your listeners or readers. We'll work on this in the workshops. The idea of focusing on what's important, where you cut the fat and leave the meat. That can be very challenging at times, because a lot of times stories can feel like, well, you also need to know this, and you need to know this, and then you need to know this, and it takes on this huge form, and you have to hack away at it. A good way that I encourage people to do their stories is first start with that. Start with everything. Put everything on the table. Put everything on the page, and then start cutting away what you don't think is important. One of the exercises that we may go through in a workshop is the stories are supposed to be 8 minutes. Sometimes I'll ask you to tell me the story in 5 minutes, and then you'll tell it in 5. And then this is an improv exercise, actually. And then I'll say, tell it to me in 3. Tell it to me in 1 minute. And you'll initially think, well, I can't tell it to you in a minute, but you can. And what you'll find is that in that minute story, those are the essential elements. You've boiled it down to the essential. Now, that often is not necessarily very satisfying, so you have to build it back out. But it's a way of identifying what is critical in this story. What do you have to know? I say keep the flow logical. And I think I might actually want to change that, because it doesn't have to be logical so much as it has to be guided. Don't let your audience get lost in time and space. They don't like that. They don't like not knowing, where are we? When are we? So you can move your story around. It doesn't have to be A, B, C, D. The story can be D, A, C, B, but you have to be sure that you are guiding your listeners through those transitions of time and space. And so one of the things that we can provide in the workshop is that ear. I can, let you know, I'm lost. I don't know where we are. And so the reason you don't want that to happen, right, is because you don't want questions knocking around in your listeners' minds that are keeping them from engaging with your full story, right? So like if you have the question of like, well, how did they get to the kitchen? If that's what they're wondering about, then they're really not listening to everything you're saying, because part of them is like, I don't understand how they got to the kitchen. I wish I knew how they got to the kitchen. Have a strong ending. Make it feel conclusive. Don't let your story wander off. Don't let it just slant away. This is also look at other stories and see how they're structured, and we're going to do that here in just a minute. Oh, right now we're going to do this. Hi, Bill. Look. One of the stories I want you to quickly take, we're not going to look at all of it, but I have some clips from previous storytellers. Breeda is actually one of them as well. But this is from Bill Krieger, who's with us this morning. I think this was 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago. Okay. And I'm just going to play the clip, and then I'll tell you what I really love about it. Hopefully this will work. Oh, Not good. Hold on. It worked when I tried it before.
On October
To
13th,
enable, if,
2007.
in the PowerPoint, is there a thing to enable a live video?
Can you guys hear that? You cannot hear it.
We started to hear it, and
Started to hear it.
is there supposed to be a video as well?
Yeah, you cannot see the video.
Mm-mm.
Right, couldn't see the video.
Can you see it now?
No.
Okay,
No.
hold, let me see. Maybe what I have to do,
Are you using two screens?
yes.
You have to make sure you point to the right screen when you're sharing.
Okay,
So your PowerPoint is probably on one, and you might have to switch.
okay,
um,
so I'm gonna do a new share. I apologize for this, everybody, but exit. Give me 1 second. Boy, this worked before.
That's why we love Zoom. You know, it's never boring.
Right. Let me try this. Okay, one more time. All right, so you guys can see the story snippets slide, right?
No, we can't see anything except for the group.
Okay, here we go. I think I know what I want to do. Give me 1 second. I apologize for this, the awkwardness of this. But it'll help. I'm confident. One second. Okay, now I will do this. Let's see. Can you see this?
One
Yes.
grandchild. I think his wife
Yep.
is somewhere over here. Is
Okay.
that right?
We're gonna
Would
get
you
to Bill's
stand up?
story.
Come on, come on.
Okay, here we go.
On October 13th, 2007, I stepped off the battlefield in Mosul, Iraq, and onto the airplane that would take me home. And 2 weeks later, I found myself driving from my home in Holt, Michigan to
Brian?
my office in Lansing, Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't see a video.
arrived
Does
at my
anybody else
office-
see a video?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna suggest
Oh.
that you have two screens open there. I would minimize the one you have over top. And then,
What can you see?
there you go. So
Now we
now,
got it.
Oh,
we
now
got
you
it.
can see
Now
this. Oh, okay.
expand that.
Yeah, but see if I expand it, I think you lose it.
Okay, well then maybe we'll just watch it short,
Can
smaller.
you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay, good. All right. So I'm gonna take it back 1 second. Where'd you go, Bill? Let's see how this. All right, great.
On October 13th, 2007, I stepped off the battlefield in Mosul, Iraq, and onto the airplane that would take me home. And 2 weeks later, I found myself driving from my home in Holt, Michigan to my office in Lansing, Michigan. When I arrived at my office, I got out of my car and I locked it up and I smiled because it was going to be an amazing day. And it wasn't going to be an amazing day for all the reasons you might think. It wasn't because the sun was shining or because it was a warm fall day or even because the birds were chirping. It was going to be an amazing day because no one shot at me and nothing blew up. Now, my very next thought was, I'm a crazy person because no one thinks this way. But I made my way into the office and I started my journey back to the civilian world. But what I found happening was I had sort of lost my empathy for others.
Okay. So here's what let me get back to everybody. Great. Okay. So and I'll get back to the thing in a minute. So one of the things that I love about that, and I'm not saying that just because Bill's here, because I didn't know that he was going to be here. But is that I think that is a compelling, engaging beginning. What happens? One, we know when, we know where. We immediately understand, I would call this is an overcoming the monster plot, right? And we understand that right at the beginning. I think it's clear. I started making my journey back to civilian life. And we know that that is going to be a problem. I would encourage you, there are videos on I think they're on the Big Hearted site, of past storytellers. Check out Bill's story. Watch the arc of it. One of the wonderful things I do love about it is that it actually, in one sense, violates a rule, because all the rules that I'm sharing, they're only there as guideposts. So what you'll see is that typically in overcoming the monster plots, the monster is overcome, right? The monster is defeated. The dragon is slayed. But what you'll see in Bill's story is that the fight continues. There is a defeat of the monster, but the monster is not gone. So when I say it's a violation of the rule, I'm just saying that it kind of breaks from that idea of that this is finished, that the story is done. He makes it clear at the end that it's not. Okay, I want to next touch it. Let's see if this technology can be a little easier for me. 1 second. I'm going to set up the other one.
Brian, can I suggest you start the full video on your screen before you start your share?
That is exactly what I am
Okay,
doing.
great. We're on the same page. Awesome. Thank you.
Hopefully this will work exactly right. Okay. Here comes the next one. Can you see that?
I met Ed Cox in an ensemble class at the Nashville Jazz Workshop. He was playing tenor sax and I was on the piano. And we were by far the oldest members of that ensemble. I was 71, Ed was 92. And of course, being the oldest people there, we were the ones who always got there early. So here we are with our instruments, waiting for everybody else. What do? Begin to play something. Ed would begin to play some tune and I would recognize it and join right in. I'd start some tune and he'd play a jazz lick with it. I commented, Ed, you and I could be an ensemble all by ourselves. Well, he jumped on that like a goose on a worm. He said, let's do it. I said, yes, let's do it. And before I knew it, we were an ensemble, a duo, playing the nursing home circuit.
Okay. So, one of the things I love about that story, same thing, what Roger does right up front. We know this is a character story. We know this is a relationship story. We know this story is about Ed Cox, the friendship that he and Ed Cox share over music. Where does it go? Well, I think we all might know the sad ending of this story, although it's an inspiring one as well. I love the little colloquialism he has in there, like goose on goose on. Now I can't remember what it is, but I love that. Yeah, goose on a worm. I love the idea of we started. They were touring the retirement home circuit. That's fantastic to me. So one of the other things to look at with both of these storytellers is observe how relaxed and confident they appear. And I use the word appear because that doesn't mean they are. Just means that's the way they're presenting. There isn't a whole lot of movement. They're able to stay in one place, and they're speaking directly out to the audience. So when you're looking at a beginning, like Roger's story, if this is about someone you know, or a relationship, and that might definitely be the case with this love theme, we need to know that person. And what I would tell you is that in the beginning of Roger's story, we start to get a feel for Ed Cox. And by the end of that story, when we lose Ed, we all feel that loss. That's how great of a portrait Roger paints of Ed and their relationship. All right, we're going to look at one more, and this is our friend Breeda. Okay, give me 1 second. It was a little more awkward than I thought it was going to be, but we'll survive. Okay. Oop. Okay. All right, here we go. This is Breeda from 4 years ago or something like that.
My mother, Mary Kelly, was an ordinary woman with an extraordinary outlook on life. She was a woman of great faith in God and in herself. She always said she was blessed. Mary Kelly loved to travel, and even though she never learned to drive, she really got around. She was always open to new experiences. I always said she'd go to the opening of a donut shop. She just loved life. And she taught me that, even when she was at the end of hers. This is my mom and her beloved.
Okay. Again, I think that's a great opening. We know we're going to get to know her mother, Mary Kelly. It helps. There will be photos that we encourage to use in these stories to think about. But we know Mary Kelly, Breeda's experience. She's very poised. She's very in control. She utilizes humor and establishes right at the end of that beginning. If you think of the beginning as your first 4 or 5 sentences, she establishes right there, again, that this is going to end with the loss of Mary Kelly. I should stress that despite the fact that I've used 2 examples of someone dying at the end of the story, that doesn't mean that they should all be that way. These are just 2 beginnings that I think are really, really effective. So think about that with your own story. Start at a point, and what I would say too regarding humor and the use of that, find where you're comfortable. You know, we know that we've seen the classic thing where somebody has to get up and present in front of people and somebody is giving them a joke, like to break the ice. Okay, come out with a joke. And don't be funny in a way that, try to be funny in a way that you're not. Be yourself. And if that's funny, great. It's also okay if it's not. Yeah, okay, good. So let's quick get back to the PowerPoint. That wasn't too, once we figured that out, that wasn't too bad. Okay. Can you guys see this? Is it back up? Yeah, great. Thank you. Oh, it's all the way back at the beginning, isn't it? No, it's not. Let's see. Oh, I'm right on track. Holy cow. All right. So one of the other things to look at is when you are listening to stories, or watching them or reading them, ask yourself, what kind of plot is this story? Once you start identifying, oh, this is a quest story. Oh, this is a rags to riches story. It actually will help you shape your own and identify your own. This is about how to prepare your story for those of us that might be a little older and a little worried about our memory. Don't be. The key is the first step. The process of taming a story is one of getting close to the story and inviting it to be close to you so that you may share it with others. What do I mean by that? I mean becoming so familiar with the story, not the words, the story, that you can get up there and tell it, and the words in one sense won't matter because you know the story so well. You're just it's a familiar path that you're walking down. That's so little rote memorization is involved. If you work the story and become as familiar with it as possible, the language will come to you. It's not about remembering the words. Many times I have had a storyteller that is keyed on the words. And what can happen is if you forget the words, or then you become lost. Don't key on the words, key on the story, the words will come. Think about the shape so that you know where you're going. I call it creating stepping stones for your story. So you can have 4, 5, 6 stepping stones, and each one, that's what you have to first memorize. What are the stepping stones? What's A, B, C, D? If you remember those 4 things, then the story becomes a river and it'll just carry you along. You won't be driving the story. It will be carrying you. Write out your outline. Some people, it can help to make, that are maybe more visual. It can help if you create a storyboard. Write down images that you can call up and you can see in your mind. This can help you keep track of your story. You don't have to remember the words. I remember, oh yeah, it's a picture of me dropping a cake on the floor. That's where I am in the story. And then you can go forward that way, using images to guide you. I do encourage this, memorizing the opening and beginning. Or that's both things. Memorizing the opening and the ending. When you first get out there, this is for any event, it can be a little, the lights, the people, the microphone, and it's just you. It's just you. That can be a little, oh, okay. If you've memorized the first 3, 4 sentences, that can help move you into the story, gives you a place to start. And the same thing with the ending. If you memorize that, it gives you a place to land. You'll see it coming. You'll be like, oh my God, I'm almost at the end of this thing. Thank you, Jesus. And then think of your story in terms of images. I tell the story also about the one storyteller that was telling about her grandmother. And it was dress rehearsal, I think. And she got up and she'd gotten caught in trying to think of the words. And it was not good. And she was losing confidence. And I said, you know what? Just stop. Close your eyes. See your grandmother. Hear your grandmother's voice. Smell your grandmother smoking those Virginia Slims. This is be there in the story. And once she did that, she even started in places where she had her grandmother saying things. She started speaking in her grandmother's voice. Her voice, she took on this persona of her grandmother. And it was amazing to see. And the story immediately elevated and her confidence went up. And it was much, much better. So think of your story in terms of images. Okay. A few steps for preparing your story. Learn the plot. Know where you're going. Know the order of it. Use imaging. I mentioned that. Flesh out your setting and characters. Put in details so that you know who this person is. Your job is to find details that help us see them. Memorize only a few select phrases or words, and then practice your story out loud. This is critical. I had my brother do a story for me one time, and we came to like the second workshop, and I said, well, have you worked on it? And he was like, oh yeah, I've been working in my head. That's terrible because he didn't want to do it in front of a mirror. He didn't want to look silly and felt weird. Do it out loud. Practice it on a walk. Practice it while you're drawing or driving. And allow your inner self to be part of the process. Engage with it. Explore it. Find something often, I can tell you this, in that the telling a story is a exercise in discovery. You may think you know your story. And I almost promise you that if you open yourself to that story and start looking and exploring it, you will discover something you may have known, but you didn't recognize or understand. You may find something about yourself. My brother wanted to tell a story of the summer that he and my other 2 brothers wanted to compete wanted to become Olympic ice skaters or speed skaters at the age of 17, 19, and 20. And they had never skated before. I mean, it was an absurd idea, but they spent the summer preparing to become these Olympic athletes. And I have a photograph that I took of them that summer. And my brother wanted to tell the story about that because he thought it was hilarious. And as we explored that story, as we talked about it, it became clear that the reason he wanted to tell that story was because I had already left for New York. I'd left home for New York. My other brother had joined the Army. And my third brother was getting ready to go out west. And this was going to leave John, my youngest, at home alone. And that was the final summer that he was there with everyone at home. That's why that photo was important to him. Not because it was funny and ridiculous that they were pursuing their Olympic dreams at so late in life. It was because of when that happened. And he really didn't understand that until we started asking questions and reflecting on the story and the photograph. It was a terrific moment, and open yourself to that. This is about learning it. If you're afraid of that, or you're concerned that you might have memorization problems, we will go through these in the workshop. But again, images are huge. Seeing the whole of your story instead of worrying about parts. And thinking about not getting out of your head in one sense, and thinking and feeling the story as opposed to thinking about the story. And then this idea of seeing connections that it's like sinew. It leads you from one piece of the story to the next. Very practical advice. Record yourself telling it. Might be odd to hear your voice at first. We all find that a little bizarre. Get over it and get used to it. You can hear certain things when you're telling a story. I have a terrible habit of using when really the use of a pause is much more effective and powerful. There I go. I said it again. Listen to yourself several times. Visualize the story. I've mentioned that before. Retelling the story aloud to yourself. Sharing it with a friend. Telling it to a friend. Some people like to write their stories down and then read it over and over and over again and then tell it out loud and record it and match it up. That can be a very effective way of doing it. If you write it though, don't get stuck on your language, right? Like I absolutely have had storytellers who love how they wrote something and then they start saying it and all you can think of is no one talks like that. No one talks like that. Think about this, the body language. Think about the stories we saw from Bill, Roger, and Breeda. Their feet, they stayed in place. They looked comfortable. They had a confident posture. Breeda did the classic V with her hands right here. This is how you keep them still, right in front of you. Don't do what I do. Eliminate your uhs as much as you can. You see the story. Focus on perceptual details. I've talked about that. Colors, sounds, tastes. Enjoy the rapport with the audience as much as you can, even though it can be somewhat a stressful situation. Enjoy your time sharing your story with the audience. Enjoy it. If you can enjoy it, it helps relax. It helps you relax, and it makes the story more pleasant as well. These last two, the be present and be yourself and speak from the heart. I just can't stress enough how important that is. If you are present and you are as authentic as you can be, you will create an engaging moment. I've seen it happen. And it's amazing when it does. And when you create that engaging moment, like I said, that then becomes an experience for everybody, right? It moves beyond just being entertained. It's something that you experience and the audience experiences with you. It can be an amazing moment. People are going to want this. These are not my tips. These are from Margot. I think it's Lightman. She says, make people root for you. I can tell you that they want to root from you from the beginning. If you don't make them hate you, I guess, and we won't let you do that. Yeah, don't puff yourself up. It's not a pitch. You're actually you're you know, it's this weird thing. Your story is about you, but it's not about you. It's not a platform device, right? It isn't something that you're using as a promotional piece. You may end up, some of you may go forward and use it as a promotional piece, but it is not a promotional piece and shouldn't come across as a promotional piece. People smell that. They recognize it. And they immediately, you create disengagement that way. I mentioned this right up front. This is the secret to effective storytelling. Stories are about how you felt. They're good stories are universal. And I think this is really good advice. It's a little late for me, but so stop living a boring life. Say yes to things that scare you, and lead a story-worthy life, which I think is really great advice. Wish I'd heard it when I was younger. That's my email. Feel free to email me with any questions or thoughts. Like I said, I do there. So a couple things quick before I go. I do a live storytelling event called Snapshots. If you're interested, email me. I can send you more information. There are other opportunities. There's a Go Comedy. There's something they call Let's Just Say live storytelling. I think they've got themes coming up. They do a theme every month. And I think, actually, I just got an email. I think they have seen themes for March and April already. Let me know if you're interested in that. I can send you information on that too, or you can just Google it. And that's Go Comedy in Ferndale. Let's Just Say. And that's all I got. So.
Excellent. Well, Brian, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you bring to Big Hearted Stories. What you've brought to me, what you've taught me is just invaluable. So, and you're just so great to work with. And I think that's, I hope, the message that we want to help you. We want you to be successful. And that's why we structured the program the way that we have in terms of the coaching sessions that we'll have with the 4 or 5, final folks that we will select. Brian and I will have these Zoom coaching sessions one-on-one with you. So it's not in a group setting, and it's all about helping you make your story the very best experience for you and for the audience as well. So couple things I just want to go over. First of all, are there any, well, let me go over the details and then we'll get to the Q&A. Is that fair? Yep. Okay. So the theme, love stories. I hope after hearing the information that Brian presented that you might be inspired to tell a story that might be different than what you originally thought. Oh, this is the love story I want to talk about. Because let me tell you what we're looking for. We are looking to build a program. So the evening will be hosted again by Vic Strecker. Our guest storyteller is John U. Bacon, who many of you know him. He's a local Ann Arbor writer, written many books, tells a lot of sports stories. And so we're very curious to see what his take on love stories is, because it's not limited to a traditional love story that people might think of when we hear the topic love stories. This is what we're hoping that you're going to be inspired to think of something quirky or out of the box. It may not be the greatest love story that you've experienced, but it's so memorable, or it's so special, or it's so surprising that it will make a good story. So yes, it could be a traditional love story. It could be a non-traditional love story. It could be a traditional story. It could be a love story that did not work out, You know, it doesn't have to necessarily have a happy ending. It could be a love story about a dog that you had when you were a child, a pet, an animal, a love story about our national parks, a love story about a place that you traveled at one point in your life that you will never forget, that you love that place and the people there. Maybe that's it.
Maybe you love the Lions and have finally felt the relationship return, the love return.
Exactly, exactly. Still a bit unrequited, but you know, yeah, exactly right. So it could be about an event or a sports team, a passion. And maybe you love woodworking, like you can't wait to get your time in your shop and the connection you feel to the materials. I don't know. So a work or a career, maybe you had a job at some point in your life for a short time, but that it changed your life, or you have a passion for certain work that you do. Maybe your faith, maybe you have a depth of faith that has a story that, you know, has something powerful. So we want you to, what we're looking for is diversity in terms of building out this program. So if you're not selected, it does not mean that your story wasn't great or that you didn't do a good job, but maybe we had 10 stories that were submitted that were a traditional love story with a lovely happy ending and romantic and sweet. And that's wonderful. But to build a compelling program in the show, we want to have a variety of different experiences. So some that have a happy ending, some that, you know, are tragic and sad, some that are really funny, some that are just goofy, but memorable and wild. I mean, who knows? So I just challenge you to think of it when you're selecting the story to tell, that's what you're looking for. Brian nailed it when he said about being engaging the audience, even if they have no connection, no frame of reference to your story, to your life experiences, they can't relate, but you are so authentic. You are speaking from your point of view, your vantage point is so powerful. People will feel that and they'll know it, and they'll know you're not reciting, you're not an actor in a play. It's not a performance. It's your lived experience. And it is so powerful. And it's also very freeing to you because you're not memorizing a script, and no one is going to call you out and say, oh no, she was wearing a red dress that day. I was there. You're wrong. You're not going to have to deal with any pushback from the audience because you're telling a true story. That's another important thing. This is not a fantasy. This is not around the campfire. Let's come up with a fantastical experience with creatures in the night or something like that. Although creatures in the night love stories, yeah, never mind. Anyway, so that's what I want to share with you about thinking about the story and reaching in to find something good, and what we're looking for when we select the storytellers. So here's some important dates. This is great. This is on Zoom. It's virtual. It doesn't matter whether you're in the lovely state of Michigan or not. The deadline for the entry, we said, is March 15th. And as Brian said, what we're looking for is just a summary. We are not looking for a finished, completed thing. I think it's 250 words on the application. It's just to make sure that you know that the theme is love stories and that you have something, and it can be 3 sentences. It does not have to be a fleshed out pitch. Honestly, it's just about staying focused on the theme and focused on the event. So don't stress out about the quality or the caliber of your pitch. Your submission to be invited to the Pitch Fest, okay? The Pitch Fest itself will be in person in Ann Arbor. So that is really important that you are available. It's a Saturday or a Sunday. So you can decide what day works better for you. And we'll it'll be daytime, and we'll try to get them blocked up together so that we can allow everyone to who submitted an idea that is within the theme, that they would be invited to the Pitch Fest. And so we'll work with you. You'll be able to choose the time. You don't have to be there for the whole day. Each pitch, it's about a 15-minute window. And so we want to hear a few minutes about you and about your story, and then we'll have some back and forth and maybe give you some exercises or an opportunity to explain more, or so that we can understand and have an appreciation for why you chose this story to tell. Okay. Then usually that Monday, we will announce who the chosen storytellers are. So you'll know that. And then we'll be in communication with you to say when the first coaching session will be with you, not coordinated with anyone else. That will be on Zoom. Brian, I don't know if we're doing any in-person coaching this year, with now that we're sort of out of COVID world, it's always good to do things in person, but it's not required. So if you live in a further area and you want to do the Zoom coaching, that's probably the way it's going to go, but we
can play that by ear, Breeda. I
Yeah.
think because I do prefer, if possible, an in-person, at least one, because I mean, it's more intimate, I mean,
It is, and then people
can
feel
see-
connected.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
but that might, if that isn't feasible, Zoom will absolutely work. So.
Right. So just to let you know that we will schedule it with you, and the location will work with you on that, so that we can make that happen. And we'll space it out. So you have one session, then there'll be a couple of weeks and you can work on whatever it is that we discussed in your session. We'll have a second one, and then we'll wait till we get a bit closer. The performance dates, so two more important dates for that are specific is May 29th. There will be a dress rehearsal at the Lydia Mendelson Theater that is on the University of Michigan campus in Ann Arbor. The students will be mostly gone by that stage, so maybe parking will be good. We can always hope. That's always a challenge. And then the performance itself is on May 30th in the same location. Okay, so the rehearsals typically in the middle of the day, and the performances in the evening. Okay. Janet was kind enough. She put in the chat the link to the storytellers. I'm not sure if it's from last year, but it's video that you can take a look at, and you can certainly go to the Big Hearted Stories website and see other recordings.
So Breeda, it is for last year, and they should be able to navigate to other years as well.
Okay, terrific. So that's what I have. Brian, is there anything I missed, or are we ready for Q&A?
Well, there is just one other little note, and that is that we try and use photos as part of the event. So you may have noticed with Breeda's story, we saw a picture of her mother. So think about that. It's not something that you have to have decided right up front. It's something we can find out later, like what might be a good photo to go with this story. But that might be an element to consider. If you have a story that you really feel, this is a great story, but I don't really have any photos that might go with this, certainly go ahead. I would still encourage you to submit it, and because we can continue to explore it, but if you do have photos that you identify with the story or with the people in it, that could be a great thing.
Yeah, and usually one or two is good, whether it's maybe a before and after or something, or just one, but it will not be a whole slide deck. So you will
it's not a slide deck, right?
It's not and not a video, and
we
so
don't want to hear. You may love Italy, but I don't want to hear about your vacation there.
Exactly, we want to nail it down to. And nothing that's the idea is that it doesn't take away from the story. It's an exclamation point. It augments it. It really brings the audience to say, oh, and it can be a really powerful moment. So I think it's a brilliant storytelling. It adds so much to the experience. So and as you flip through your photo albums, that you might think of other stories that you hadn't even, you forgot all about. So keep that idea of the theme being broad. Think of how can you set yourself apart from other storytellers, and what is a powerful story that you remember. That's the other point. You own the story, and that makes it easy to tell because it's your experience. You're not trying to memorize someone else's ideas or thoughts. You lived it. And as Brian said, you come up with visual cues. You've chosen the story for a reason. And that makes it easier it helps you in terms of telling it and telling it authentically, which is, the most important thing you can do. Okay. I'm ready for questions. Brian, do you have anything else before we go there?
I'd like to open the Q&A.
Mhm.
I'd like to ask Catherine. How long do you keep your Christmas tree up?
That's a good question. I've been asked many times at Zoom meetings. Whenever our son has the chance to put it down is how long we keep it. Last year was almost to March. Yeah.
That's
No
awesome.
pressure.
Yeah.
I love that very much.
I love
It's
it.
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I do have a question, but I see somebody else, Maureen, ahead of me, so I'll just raise my hand after her.
Oh, we've got time. Go. Well, Maureen,
Oh.
go ahead since you had your hand up. Okay, it says off mute, but we can't hear you. Maybe your volume?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
So from the beginning of the program, I sort of noticed Catherine's room and thinking how gorgeous it looks. And guess what? I never noticed the tree. Thank you.
Oh, fun. Great. So Catherine, you did have a question?
Yeah, I do. I noticed there was a date of March 15th is the deadline for submission.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned about the theme is love story.
Mhm.
And that's not what I was thinking of, but that is this year's theme, love
Yes.
story, your
Yes.
story.
But it's a
Okay.
very broad umbrella, a very broad definition of love stories. So don't who knows? There's ways to fit things in, but we do want to have, and part of that is a marketing thing too. This is a fundraiser, so if people, think that, oh, this is going to be interesting, we hope it will be. We definitely want it to be entertaining. We definitely want it to be engaging. It may be inspiring. It may be uplifting. We want people to have a good time. And if their heart is touched because the story is sad or poignant, that's okay. That's not thing, but we don't want everyone to be on the same trajectory. So we're looking for different types of stories. Does that
And
help?
what were some of the previous year's themes?
So one year was journeys, and
Okay.
people talked about a variety, whether it was a travel or a spiritual journey or something like that. Brian, help me. What are some other ones that we had?
Last year was purpose.
Purpose, yep. Mhm. Journeys, purpose.
They're really memorable themes, aren't they?
I know.
That's okay. I mean,
So if I could
yeah.
chime in, if you go to the website, from the link that I sent, they
Yeah.
have all of the last couple of years and their themes.
Okay.
So you should be able to find it there. I was trying to find it really quickly, but you should be able to find it quickly.
And the purpose of the theme is really, it helps storytellers have some kind of structure.
Yeah.
And then it helps the audience to think about, this is, an interesting take or a topic. But that's what's so great is when someone has a surprise, when they have a story
Generations
that's
was
like,
another one. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Janet. Generations was another theme.
yes, generation.
I see.
Yep.
Generations.
Yep.
I have more questions. Not that I think I'll be selected, but I like to know the dates because I travel a lot.
Mhm.
So besides March 15, what are some of the dates then?
23 and 24, March 23 and 24. That's when we're going to have the in-person pitch fest, when you'll need to come and stand up and talk to Brian and I, and maybe one or two other people. We have a small panel that we will listen to everyone in person, and then we will make our selection. Oh, and that's a really good opportunity to mention this, what we're looking for. We're looking for a great story, first and foremost. Secondly, we're looking for a storyteller that has poise, that has confidence. Stage presence is something that is important. Someone who is coachable. And this is very important. If you come in and say, I've told this story to my friends for the last 20 years and they love it and I've nailed it and this is it, and you're not interested in learning ideas of how to make it better or how to work, to shape it, then you're probably not a good fit for this event, because we do want to support you and help you, but you need to have an open mind and be coachable. And that's an important element. Brian, would you agree?
I would. I guess what I would say is that it's possible, certainly, that the story that you've told many, many times, you come in, blow us away, and we're like, we're done. I mean,
Yeah.
that was great, and let's go on. The thing that we would want, though, is to, if we say, well, what about this, or what about being open to the idea of further developing the story, because sometimes what happens is what people think of as a story is actually an anecdote, which is not to say that an anecdote cannot be the kernel of your story or the launch pad of your story, but an anecdote is very different. And so, we would just want you to be open to the idea of exploring the story. This is how I would say it. Come in with the looking to engage, to have the full experience of being a storyteller, which, as I mentioned before, is in part exploring the story yourself. This can be a journey for you as well. So someone that comes in thinking they already know the story, they are not taking part in that other side of storytelling, which is exploring it for yourself and possibly learning something. I tell this often. I had a storyteller. He was telling about his dad. I won't go all into it, but his dad abducted him and his brothers, and they traveled all over the country avoiding the law, and his mother and this stuff. And I said, do you think your dad was a liar? And I will never forget the look of, it was like I'd thrown cold water in his face, right? I mean, he was stunned and he was like, why? And I saw it hit him. Yeah, my dad was a liar. He had never actually attached that word. He knew his dad was deceptive and but it was revelation to him. And I'm not saying that's going to happen all the time. I just would encourage you to be open to that. Come in ready to have an explorative experience yourself. I don't think explorative is a word, but if it is, great. If it's not, I just coined it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. That's great.
I have more questions, but I don't want to be the only one asking.
Well, how about if we pop around and we'll come back to you, Catherine, okay?
Okay.
Maureen, you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, and so I was listening to Brian talk about, the story and stuff. I was curious because he kind of ended like you kind of got to engage them right away. And when you're writing a letter or something, to get somebody to do something, it's a persuasive letter. And persuasive always has to start with, the hook, getting them hooked. And then the other part of writing a good story, I understand, is, or more like business communications or something. You tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them it, and then you again remind them what you told them.
Yeah.
Can you just address how storytelling is either similar to that or different than that?
Yeah, it's very different. So we've had occasion to, Toastmasters, I believe, are typically take that structure, right? I'm going to tell you up front what this is about, and then I'm going to tell it to you, and then I'm going to remind you what I told you. That is very different from storytelling. the storytelling, this is not to say that the story you tell cannot be persuasive. It very well may be persuasive, but it is persuasive through the personal experience. When you are telling a story, you want to create, this is how a story works. Create a question or questions, answer a question. Create a question, answer a question, create a question, answer a question. So if you look at, and this will sound, I don't know what people are going to think about this, but J.K. Rowling in our Harry Potter series, I read them out loud to my children, I think 3 or 4 times. And one of the remarkable things that she is very talented at is knowing when her readers want an answer to a question that she has posed earlier. And because there's nothing more frustrating, right, than having a question and having that answer just dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. The way to work it is it's question, answer, and then, or you hold the answer. Anyway, so that's very different from a persuasive thing. When you are looking at a story, you want to create tension. You can use foreshadowing. You want people to know up front kind of what the story is about so that they feel comfortable going on this ride. But then you also want to surprise them. There's an element of surprise in storytelling that in that type of, the other kind of presentation, there isn't. Also, I strongly discourage in storytelling any kind of call to action, which is typically also might take place in a persuasive speech, where you say, and now that I've shared this with you, or any type of moralistic statement, right? I now know that, you have to live life every day as if it were your last. I hope you leave here with, it's not a sermon, right? You want to have the trust in your audience that they will leave with that feeling, with that thought, with that inspiration, not because you told them, but because you shared something with them. Does that answer the question? Because I can go on. Okay.
I as you were talking, Brian, I thought of another love story within the theme, is that maybe it's about loving yourself, a decision you made or something that happened to you that allowed you to love yourself. That might be an amazing story. Who knows? But not ending up with, and the lesson is, or the moral is, because the story itself is going to be so well structured and painted that it's obvious, and you do not need to repeat that, the message that you're giving, if that's appropriate for you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I know Catherine said she has more. Catherine, go ahead.
Oh, James has one too.
Oh,
I'd like to ask a question.
Yep.
I had in my notes somewhere that we could submit more than one story.
Mhm.
Would that take place during the entry process? I heard you mention 250 word limit. Would that be per story or between the 3?
Oh, it's up to you. I mean, if you want to, in one entry, say, these are my 3 ideas, and have, a short synopsis, a sentence to say, it's about, a dog I had when I was 10 or something like that. Or if you want to submit them as 3 separate things, you're welcome to do that. But just know, we're not going to make a decision about who is in the program based on those submissions. They're just going to help us get a framework of, the type, the theme, where you're going, whether it's the tone of it, if we can. Just kind of helps you be focused. But what is, so when you arrive then for the pitch fest at your time, we're going to look at your thing and it says, it looks like you have 3 ideas here. What's risen to the top between now and then? Or what do you think? Or Brian and I might just ask you questions about why those 2 ideas you have and which way you want to go. And there might be one that pops out to us as being really engaging, really interesting, or there might be one that is so different from all of the other submissions we have already seen that might, give you an advantage. And so that's a really good reason for having options.
Yeah,
Brian?
yeah. So the idea behind submitting a couple of options, 2 or 3 or 4, is that it allows you to explore certain variety, and possibly one of those. So for example, and I wanted to quickly say, we have never had an occasion. I'm looking at Granville and Norma, excuse me, and we've not had an occasion where we've had a couple telling stories, but I mentioned it last year, and I'm going to mention it again. Would not be opposed to the idea. It would be interesting. So I don't know if you're considering telling a story together, but don't rule that out.
Right.
So the idea of multiple submissions is that you may have a great How I Met My Partner story that could be just wonderful, right? And amazing. And you may have one of Here's My Dog When I Was 10. We may have started to hear, or at the end of the thing, we may get 10 dog story submissions, and suddenly your How I Met My Partner stands out as like, oh, this is different. Also, tone. You may want to submit a story that falls within the tragedy, and maybe one that falls within the comedy, or one you may want a submit, because we could look at it and go, oh, we've got all these submissions and everybody dies in the end, but here's one where, it's a funny, how I fell in love with skydiving and they don't die at the end. That is good. We don't want, so, we've certainly had, like in Journeys, when we had the theme Journeys. And I don't want to when I say this, I'm not discounting any of these stories. They were all important, but there were a lot of cancer survivor stories, right? This is my journey through surviving cancer. And each one of them was compelling and important to tell and so forth. But we didn't want a night of how I survived cancer. So, you can only maybe pick one or 2 or something. So that's the advantage, I guess, in submitting multiple stories, is that it increases the opportunity for you to fit into a slot that we might not have yet.
And we're not going to tell you what to say. We're not going to choose your story. If you say, these are the 3 I'm considering, but this is the one that is in my heart. This is the one I really want to offer. And we may give you the opportunity to talk about the other ones. But if you're not saying, yeah, I'm not feeling it, it's not the right thing. Okay. I mean, we're not going to make you do that, but it will impact. We just want to stress the point of what our goal is, Brian and I and our panel, of how we're going to choose someone. So or the storyteller. So if you're not selected, please don't feel that you weren't good enough or anything. It was just a matter of
yeah, absolutely not.
the balance in the program. Okay. Anybody else? Catherine, I think you're so patient. Thank you.
That's okay. I wanted to ask, and I see some answers on the chat.
Mhm.
The submission is up to 250 words.
Mhm.
And it says 8 minutes on stage.
The
But-
final story.
Yeah,
When all is
Well-
said and done, it will not exceed 8 minutes.
right. Well, I'm not even going to go there because I just want to know the submission. What are the requirements besides 250 words?
Just to say, my idea for the theme love stories, here's an idea that I like. It might just be one, and you could summarize it, a few sentences. You don't have to have a polished, finished story that we're going to read. We're not going to make a decision based on your submission.
Right.
Okay.
Here's what I would even say. I'd go so far as to say this, is that one of the things in the submission process, it's actually more a matter of using it as a way of saying, no, this doesn't fit, right? Like if you submit, this is a story about the dog that I had when I was 10 years old and that my dad ran over with a tractor. I might, that, all right, I'm interested in that. I want to hear about that. But if the story is, and I don't even know that I can necessarily come up with an example, but that doesn't fit at all the theme. That makes it clear that you're submitting a story that, in a sense, with your own agenda, you want to tell this story. I'm looking for an opportunity to tell this story. This story is about how I became VP of X. That might be a story. I'm like, well, that doesn't. It's almost more an opportunity of finding stories that don't fit.
Yeah.
I think you can be assured that we tend to be very generous on the submission process about calling who we call to the pitch fest. It's at the pitch fest, Catherine, that it becomes a little more important to have a fairly clear vision of the story that you can communicate to us.
Yep. And the other thing that would be a non-starter is that if somebody said, well, I started my company and this is my business and I love it so much and this is my passion and it's, a self-promotion of a business, something like that, that's not going to work. That would not be something we would want. So
Okay.
we can safely say that. But other than that, we're open. We're open to ideas and we just want to help you shape it to be really good.
Thanks. I saw my second question answered by Janet. Exactly how do you submit it?
There you
And
go.
she put it on chat. So, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. And we did it online to just make it level playing field for everyone. So it's easy. And the 250, is meaning we did not want a 3,000 word essay. We do not want the full story. We just want a snippet, a window, and you can write 50 words. You do not have to say, oh, I need to fill it with 250 words. You do not, absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Maureen.
You can hear me?
Yep.
So I'm just curious about, I really know what I want to talk about. I do have several stories. My question is, you talk about having a theme and stuff. Is there anything where you have like a major theme and sub-themes within it, or do you stick with one complete theme?
Brian, maybe you can answer that. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I'm trying. Maureen, can you talk about that a little more? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Okay. So my husband has Alzheimer's. Okay. And so that's sort of the theme. I mean, generally.
Mhm.
And I'm his sole caregiver and he's still at home with me. And so as I think about talking about that, then there's some like sub-themes or ideas that I wanted to interweave with that.
Sure.
Mhm.
That could maybe even possibly be a story by themselves.
Mhm.
So I can speak to that.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we would do is that we would because here's the challenge. You have 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And in an 8 minute, and I'll tell you, I mean, I see this quite often, that you want to try and pack everything into that 8 minutes. You're not going to be able to. That's just the hard truth. So what the exercise is, you can have multiple themes in your story. Absolutely. But it's probably 2 or 3. Once you get past, if you try and put your theory of everything into this nutshell, you just run out of room and everything becomes diluted, right? Because I've got to actually just fly through this because I've got so much to put in. So the exercise is, how do I narrow this down? Where'd you go? I was actually there you are. I was trying to make eye contact with you. And all of a sudden it shifted. But so the question becomes, you're looking for what, and I would discourage this. Don't think about this as talking about something. It's not a talk. Find a moment with you and your husband that you can paint, that you can draw with words. And we would use that moment as the foundation to build a more comprehensive story off of. But I can tell you that you will not be able to. Breeda's story about her mother is actually something you might want to look at because it does involve dementia. It's a really good example, actually, of how Breeda isolates one moment and uses that moment to explore a little bit the difficult experience of being the lone caregiver. Now there's a lot of themes that actually come off of that. So what happened is that Breeda went ahead and ended up writing a one-woman play about it because it couldn't be all contained in 8 minutes, right? She actually needed 90, probably could use even more. But so that is something that everyone is going to have to understand going into this. There may be sacrifices involved because of the 8-minute restriction. There may be things that you don't have time or space to get into and fully explore. This may be only a snapshot of your fuller story.
Thank you. That was helpful. And I recognize that, all that I could say, I can't say in 8 minutes.
Right.
I recognize that.
Yeah.
But I just have a surprise theme I want to bring in.
Ooh, well, I love a surprise thing.
We love that. And Maureen, just from my experience, and my heart goes out to you. People, until they've been in that spot, they have no idea how difficult it is, how stressful it is, and how isolating it is. And by speaking honestly and authentically about your experience, and if you can tie in the theme of love during the time of Alzheimer's, there will be people in that audience will relate to you and will get it. But if you can isolate and crystallize something he did, something he said, something you did or he said that was like, oh, he's himself, or he's done this, or whatever it might be, that was really powerful to you, and you can turn that moment, that element, into an amazing story. And not try to go deep into that one moment, that experience, paint that picture so authentically that people will feel it in their hearts, rather than a broad brushstroke of, he can't do this anymore, I have to do this, or this is what our life is like, or, any of the normal things that you might want to describe living and caring for him might be. You won't have time to do that.
Well, and let me, Maureen, by any chance, are you an academic?
No, my husband was.
Okay. Because the other distinction that might be important for some people is that this is not a presentation. So it isn't, this shouldn't be, this is not an informative speech, right? It can be informative, but but only through the vehicle of storytelling. So sometimes we've seen that, right? We've seen someone come in and they want to give a presentation. It has more of a presentation. It's more informative, and so and that doesn't really line up yet. Not yet. It doesn't line up with.
I mean, you can teach something without it feeling like people are being taught, and you teach it through the story and the example, and they will never forget it.
Yeah, I used to put together like the presentations for executives, right? So I'm used to, business pitches about, your business plans and results and stuff. And I know I gotta stay away from that. And I think, that the pictures that I'm going to paint with my words, are not like how I took care of him at all. And I have a number of them that I can cluster, or like you said, build tension, give an answer, so it's all been in my head. This has been an amazing opportunity to now, I had bought some poster board, and you can see I have a whiteboard here.
Yeah, good,
So I want to start storyboarding it, like you suggested.
good.
And,
Wonderful.
and so I think this session has just been amazingly helpful to now take that one idea. I have many stories, like Breeda, and but I need to focus on the one story I want to tell and the examples that bring that story to life.
Right. I think you're muted, Breeda.
Yeah, I was, my marketing director was happy. Anyway, anyone that hasn't had a chance to speak, well, has this been a good use of your time on this Saturday morning? First of all, that would be an important thing to note, that we hope that
Very much.
helpful.
Yes. Yes, very much.
Right. And
helpful.
is there anything we haven't covered that is a burning question or that you're thinking about?
I actually have one, Breeda, but I don't want to take anybody else's time
Oh,
or
Janet,
stage, so
go
to
for
speak.
it. Go right ahead.
So as we share this information to our friends and family and anyone who might be storytellers, obviously, they can apply. Is there a geographic limit to where you're asking people to come from?
No, as long as they can get to Ann Arbor for the Pitch Fest and then get to Ann Arbor for the rehearsal and performance date, it's just fine. So if you know somebody in the old
Colorado?
state, yeah, or
Okay.
Colorado, and they're willing to make the trip, we're not limiting it. It is, I think the challenge for many folks is if they are in warmer climates during the winter time and they don't plan to come back to Michigan until May, but they need to come for the Pitch Fest, maybe we can talk about that, but you must be here for the rehearsal and the event itself. That's no option there. So if those dates don't work for you, then it isn't a good fit, but we'll work with you. But yeah, no, that's a great question. If you know somebody who's in another state and might happen to be in town or available for to come in, that's fine. Okay.
I'd like to ask a personal question off topic here. Pat Bird, do I know you?
Mhm.
Well, bless your heart, it's been about 100 years.
Yes.
You never know what will happen on a Zoom.
I'm telling you.
Cool. Great. Anybody else? Have we scared you? Have we inspired you? What do you think?
Don't be
Are you
scared.
going to submit an idea?
It's very scary. Okay. But I am going
Don't
to
be
submit.
scared, Pat. Don't be scared.
Don't be scared. I'm telling you, I've worked with Brian now for many years, and he's really good at what he does. He works so hard to make everybody look good, and he's such a gentleman. He's not gonna, he does everything he can to make you feel comfortable. And that's what we really want to do, is we want you to be your best self, to do something you're going to be proud of, and that the audience is really going to enjoy the experience. So it's all about having a successful event for you, for all the participants, as well as for the audience, and to raise money for really good causes as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Les, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, so I don't want to keep you unnecessarily. Everybody loves to be let go early, but we don't want to miss out anything. So any last question before we sign off? And if you copied the links here, Janet was kind enough to put in, so it's easy to apply and look at and also if you want to go to my website, there are quite a few videos there that might be, that are storytelling or, you know, snippets from my play, I will put it here. And it's very simple. It's just breedamiller.com. And you're welcome to take a look and see if there's anything there that is helpful to you.
Hail to the victor.
I'm sorry.
Hail to the victors and go blue.
Oh, go blue. Yeah, you can't have any event. That's how you end it, right? That's the closing line, except in the storytelling event. Those are not that's not the closing line. But yes, go blue.
But it might be a love of Michigan.
It might be. Oh yeah, it could be like your heart was
It might
not
go over
broken.
huge. I don't know.
If you're a football fan, it was a good place to be, you know, for a few weeks. The passion and excitement was pretty amazing. So
Mhm.
But it might be way more interesting if you love their fencing program,
yes.
which I don't know if they have one, but
They did.
Lacrosse. I know they have lacrosse, right? Should probably do it fencing. Okay. Any last minute questions? Reach out and if you can, Brian gave you his email address. Mine is similar as well. It's breedamiller@gmail.com. So feel free to, you know, just ask us. We're open. And if we know the answer, we'll tell you. If we don't know the answer, we make up an answer. No, just kidding. If we don't know the answer, we'll find out the answer for you. But we really enjoy doing this. Brian and I do this as a volunteer. And it volunteers, and it's something we enjoy, and we just want to help you. Okay.
Great, thanks.
Great. So we'll have a recording, and if you want to share it with others, Janet, how can people? What do you think they'll get the recording? Because it takes a little bit.
Yeah, it has to be rendered. I imagine it will go on YouTube or it'll be a YouTube link. But I have to check that part out. It's too big of a file to actually send. So
Right.
So look for it in the next week or so. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All
Fair
right.
enough. Okay. Yes.
bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a
Bye.
fine
Take
weekend.
care.